She always remembered that night by the way her heart paused before her mind did, as if some quiet instinct knew something life-shifting had begun. It started with a single glance across a dimly lit cafe, the kind where people whispered without meaning to. She had stepped in only to escape the cool night air, brushing rain from her sleeves, hoping for a few peaceful minutes alone. But peace slipped away the moment she caught Rowan Hale watching her. Not staring, not evaluating, just noticing. As if he saw something the rest of the world constantly overlooked. For a fleeting second, she almost looked behind her to check if someone else stood there, someone more remarkable, someone who deserved to be observed with that kind of softness. But the space behind her was empty, and Rowan's gaze remained steady, curious, warm, and strangely familiar. She had seen him around town before, always quiet, always kind, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. People said he spent his days repairing old clocks in a tiny workshop near the square. She never knew if that was true, but he certainly carried the patience of someone who spent hours hearing time itself breathe. She chose a corner seat, hoping the delicate tremor inside her chest would settle. It didn't. It only grew when Rowan stood, hesitated, then walked toward her with that gentle certainty people get when their heart moves first. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, his tones soft enough to blend with the rain outside. From a third-person view, anyone watching might have thought she agreed too quickly. But from where she sat, from the place inside her that had felt invisible for far too long, saying yes felt like remembering a truth she had misplaced. They talked the way strangers rarely do, carefully, honestly, as if each word needed space to bloom. She found herself laughing more than she expected. He noticed small details, like how she cupped her hands around her mug because her fingers were always cold, or how her eyes softened whenever she spoke about her mother's garden. No one ever paid attention to things like that. Not until Rowan. When he asked how her day had been, he did not mean it as a routine question. He meant it in the way someone asks because they genuinely want to carry some of the weight with you. And when she hesitated, he noticed that too. "That heavy?" he murmured kindly. She looked down. "Heavier than I like to admit." He didn't offer solutions. He didn't rush her. He simply waited, with the sort of patience that made her feel safe enough to breathe again. As she talked, her voice steadier than she expected, he listened the way people listen to music, not to reply, but to understand. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen without feeling exposed. Eventually, her eyes drifted toward the window. The storm had deepened, painting the street in wandering reflections. Rowan followed her gaze, then gently pushed his scarf across the table. "You're shivering," he said. The simple gesture hit her harder than she could explain. Anyone else would have missed it, but Rowan never seemed to miss anything. The clock on the wall neared 9, though neither of them seemed eager for the night to end. She felt something forming, delicate yet undeniable, resting between them like a thread only they could see. He leaned back slightly, studying her with a question in his eyes, as if he sensed she carried one she hadn't spoken yet. But before she found the courage to voice it, the cafe lights flickered from the storm outside. Rowan's expression shifted, gentle curiosity turning into a quiet concern. "You're thinking about something," he said softly. "Something you're afraid to say." Her breath caught. He was right. He noticed it, just like he noticed everything no one else ever did. And in that moment, with her heart trembling in a way she couldn't hide, she felt the fragile beginning of something she didn't yet have a name for. Near the end of the conversation, she realized her voice had grown small when she whispered, "I don't know why tonight feels different." Rowan's eyes warmed. Maybe because it is. A soft silence followed, charged and tender, and she suddenly wondered what he would say next, or what she might confess if her courage rose just an inch higher. If you're enjoying this story so far, please like the video and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. The storm outside roared louder, and Rowan leaned forward slightly, as if bracing himself for a truth about to surface. And that was when she felt it, something shifting between them, fragile yet impossible to ignore. From the outside, the cafe still looked like any other place sheltering people from a stormy night. But from where she sat, the world had narrowed into a quiet space where Rowan's presence softened everything sharp inside her. She didn't know why she trusted him so quickly. Maybe it was the gentleness in his voice, or the way he leaned in, as if each of her words deserved room to rest. Or maybe it was simply that he saw things she didn't even realize she revealed. The rain pounded against the windows harder than before, but it only made the two of them feel more tucked away, like the night had wrapped itself around their table. Rowan held his mug loosely, watching her with a sense of patient curiosity. "You started to say something earlier," he said softly, "but you stopped." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't want to sound foolish." "You couldn't," he replied, not missing a beat. "Not tonight." She swallowed gently, unsure why that sentence made her chest tighten. "I just felt something was different, like I finally breathed after holding everything in for too long." Rowan didn't smile, exactly. His expression softened into something quieter. "I noticed." That was the thing about him. He always noticed, not in a way that made her feel studied. As if he saw the weight she carried and reached out without touching her, offering steadiness she didn't know how to ask for. She shifted slightly, watching the flicker of warm light across his face. He had an expression people wore when they wanted to say something but weren't sure if the moment was ready to hold it. She knew that look well. She had worn it many times herself. So she asked, "What about you? Why did you come over?" Rowan breathed in slowly, as if choosing honesty carefully. "Because you looked like you were trying to disappear." Her cheeks warmed, not from embarrassment, but from the familiarity of being understood in a way that felt startling. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I know," he answered gently. "Sometimes people disappear without realizing they're fading." She felt seen in a way that was almost overwhelming, yet grounding at the same time. They talked through the moments that shaped them, skipping the small talk and drifting into the quiet truths people usually keep hidden. She told him about the pressure she hid from her family, the unspoken expectations that weighed on her shoulders. Rowan listened with a stillness that steadied her. And when she faltered, he filled the silence with soft reflections. "It takes strength," he murmured, "to keep moving when no one asks if you're tired." Her breath trembled again. It wasn't that his words were grand, they were simply true, and she hadn't realized how deeply she needed someone to understand that truth. Outside, the storm grew colder, sliding across the streets with long streaks of silver. The wind rattled the cafe sign, making the room feel even more like a refuge. She noticed Rowan glance toward the window with a thoughtful look, as if weighing something. Then he turned back to her. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. When you walked in, what made you sit alone tonight instead of going home?" She hesitated. The answer was simple. Loneliness had followed her through the evening like a shadow she couldn't shake. But saying that aloud felt too raw. Instead, she whispered, "I just needed a moment where no one expected anything from me." "And did you get that moment?" he asked. She met his eyes. "Maybe, not the way I planned." His smile appeared slowly, as if he didn't want to startle the moment. They were quiet again, but this time it wasn't discomfort. It was something softer, something waiting, something building gently between them. Then a sudden flash of lightning illuminated the entire cafe. The lights flickered, dimmed, then steadied again. Rowan's eyes shifted toward her, searching her expression. "You're afraid the power might go out?" he murmured. She blinked. "How did you?" "You held your breath," he said. And just like that, her heartbeat stumbled. How could someone she barely knew understand her that quickly? Before she could process the feeling rising inside her, Rowan leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "There's something else I noticed tonight," he said. "Something I'm not sure you're ready to hear." The words hung between them, delicate and trembling, waiting for his next breath. For a moment, she simply stared at him, unsure if she should brace herself or lean closer. Rowan's tone wasn't alarming, just deeply sincere, the kind of sincerity that made her heart stir, even before she understood why. "What did you notice?" she asked gently. He exhaled slowly, his gaze settling on her with quiet steadiness. "You're carrying something you haven't said out loud in a long time. Something that's been pressing on you so heavily, you've forgotten what it feels like not to hold it." Her breath caught. Rowan wasn't accusing her. He wasn't prying. He was simply describing a truth she had never spoken, but somehow he had seen it anyway. She lowered her eyes, letting her fingers trace the edge of her mug. "You're right," she admitted softly, "but I don't know how to talk about it yet." "That's all right," he replied. "You don't have to force anything. Sometimes the heart opens a little at a time." She felt something shift inside her, a loosening, a softening, as if her guard didn't know how to stay up in front of him. It wasn't his words alone. It was the way he said them, without expectation or pressure. Outside, the storm calmed slightly, turning from sharp rain to a steady whisper. The cafe felt warmer now, the kind of warm that wrapped gently around her shoulders. Rowan took a small sip of his drink before speaking again. "Can I share something with you?" She nodded. "I haven't always been good at noticing people," he said quietly. "Not the way I want to. But lately, I've been trying to see the things people hide. Not to intrude, but because sometimes the things we hide are the parts of us that most need to be seen." She watched him carefully. He wasn't sharing this to impress her. He wasn't trying to sound wise. He was letting her glimpse a tender part of himself, something vulnerable. Her voice softened. "And what did you see in me?" "A kind of loneliness," he answered. "Not the kind that comes from being alone, the kind that shows up even when you're surrounded by others." She felt her throat tighten. He continued, "And I noticed something else. When you walked in tonight, you looked like someone who hoped no one would notice, but also wished someone would." Her eyes stung unexpectedly. She blinked it away, trying to steady her breathing. "You're very observant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Rowan hesitated. "I only notice things when they matter." The words rested gently between them. She looked out the window to steady herself, watching the reflection of the streetlights ripple across the wet pavement. When she turned back, Rowan's eyes were still on her, soft but searching. "Does it scare you?" he asked suddenly. "What?" "Being seen." Her heart thudded once, twice. She swallowed. "Sometimes." His voice lowered. "Because you're afraid of what someone might find?" She nodded. Rowan leaned back, giving her a little more space. "You don't have to show everything at once. Some truths unfold slowly, when the moment feels safe enough." Safe. That was the word her heart kept circling back to. She hadn't felt safe with someone in a long time, not in this quiet, emotional way. He lifted his gaze toward the window. "The rain's calming down," he murmured. "The roads might clear soon." She expected relief, but instead, she felt an unexpected ache in her chest, the realization that the night might end too soon. Rowan must have sensed it, because he looked back at her with a gentle uncertainty. "You seem disappointed." Heat brushed her cheeks. "I just didn't expect the night to feel like this." Like what? He asked softly. She hesitated, searching for the right words. Like, it matters. His expression changed, not dramatically, but enough for her to feel something warm unfurl between them. He leaned forward slightly. It does matter. Her breath trembled. But before she could respond, the lights flickered again. Not from the storm this time, but from something shifting inside her. A realization, soft and frightening and beautiful. And Rowan noticed that too. He watched her with a seriousness he hadn't shown all night. "You felt something just now," he whispered. "What was it?" She looked at him, really looked, feeling the truth rise in her chest. But before she could speak, the cafe door opened behind them, and her eyes darted instinctively toward the sound. Rowan followed her gaze, his expression suddenly alert, as if sensing that whatever she was about to say had been interrupted at the worst possible moment. The cafe door creaked as someone stepped inside, shaking rain from an umbrella. The soft bell above it chimed, breaking the fragile moment that had been forming between her and Rowan. She turned instinctively, her breath still unsteady from the words she hadn't yet spoken. Rowan followed her glance, then looked back at her with quiet concern. He could tell the interruption had pulled her away from something she wasn't ready to lose. "You were about to say something," he murmured gently. She hesitated, her pulse still echoing the feeling that had startled her just moments earlier. "I don't know how to explain it." "That's all right," he said. "We don't have to rush anything." She appreciated that about him, the way he never pushed, never demanded, never tried to force meaning out of moments that needed time to breathe. He simply waited, offering patience like a steady hand she hadn't expected to lean on. The stranger who'd entered settled near the counter, absorbed in their order. The small disruption faded, but the shift inside her hadn't. She looked back at Rowan, her voice quieter. "This doesn't feel like anything else in my life lately." His eyes warmed, in a good way or a frightening way. "Both," she admitted. He nodded, as if he understood that more deeply than she expected. Sometimes the things that matter most start as something we're not sure how to name. A soft silence settled around them, but it wasn't empty. It carried a kind of delicate tension, like the first moment of sunlight pushing through a long night. She felt the warmth of the cafe press softly against her shoulders. The rain had slowed to a faint drizzle, tapping gently against the window as if trying not to disturb them again. Rowan studied her for a moment, then spoke with a tenderness that steadied her breathing. "The way you looked a moment ago, it wasn't confusion, it was recognition." Her heart fluttered. Recognition of what? He held her gaze, steady and careful, of a feeling you didn't expect. She felt her breath catch. Her fingers curled lightly around her mug, seeking something to anchor her. He wasn't wrong, he rarely was, but hearing it so openly made her feel suddenly exposed, in a fragile, hopeful way. "Why do you see me like this?" she whispered. "Because you let yourself be seen," Rowan answered, "even when you don't realize you're doing it." She looked down, touched by how simple and sincere his answer was. He leaned back slightly, giving her space again. "I know tonight wasn't planned. I know you didn't expect to talk to anyone, especially not me. But sometimes the quietest moments lead us to the truths we've been avoiding." She absorbed his words, feeling each one settle inside her like stepping stones towards something deeper. "Do you always speak this gently?" she asked, attempting a soft smile. "Only when someone needs gentleness," he replied. The honesty of it warmed her. A beat of silence passed, this one softer, an invitation rather than a pause. Rowan's expression shifted, thoughtful and a little uncertain. "Can I ask you something more?" "Go ahead." "When you looked at me earlier, just before the door opened, what were you about to say?" Her breath steadied, but her heart didn't. I was trying to tell you what tonight feels like, she murmured, but the words didn't come. Do they now? He asked quietly. She searched her chest for clarity, for the courage that had flickered before. She wasn't sure she had the full answer yet, but she felt closer to it than before. I think, she whispered, I'm realizing how long it's been since someone listened to me the way you do. Rowan's expression softened in a way she hadn't seen all night. People should listen to you. Your voice matters more than you know. Her chest ached gently at the tenderness of that truth. But before she could say anything else, the stranger at the counter stood abruptly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. Both she and Rowan glanced over at the sudden sound. The stranger's eyes briefly met hers, a look almost startled, as if they recognized her. She felt a flicker of uncertainty, a faint ripple of something shifting in the night again. Rowan noticed the tension in her posture immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, leaning in just a little. She turned back to him, her pulse quickening for reasons she couldn't yet explain. "I think that person knows me," she whispered, though she wasn't entirely sure how. Rowan's expression deepened with concern, the warm kind that wrapped around her like a quiet promise. "Do you want to leave?" he asked. But she didn't know the answer, not yet. For a moment, she didn't move. The stranger's brief glance still lingered in her mind, stirring something she couldn't quite place, a memory she couldn't pull fully into focus. She watched them step out into the quiet drizzle, disappearing beneath the soft glow of the street lamp. Rowan kept his eyes on her, not the door. He always focused on what mattered. "You're tense," he said gently. She exhaled slowly. "I think I've seen them before, but I can't remember where." "Did they look familiar in a troubling way?" he asked, "or just a passing way?" She paused. "Just surprising." Rowan nodded as if that answer made sense. "Then maybe it was only the moment that startled you." She appreciated the way he steadied her, with calm, not assumptions, with understanding, not urgency. It made her realize how unusual that was, how rare it felt to be met with such tenderness. She ran her thumb along the edge of her mug, grounding herself. The rain outside softened again, tapping quietly like a whispered reassurance. "I don't want to leave yet," she admitted. He offered a faint smile. "I didn't either." The truth settled between them, warm, fragile, unmistakably real. She leaned back, letting herself simply breathe. "It's strange," she murmured. "I came here tonight because I needed space, but somehow, talking to you feels easier than being alone." Rowan lowered his gaze in a thoughtful way, as if her words carried more weight than she realized. "Sometimes," he said softly, "we need someone to sit beside us so the silence doesn't feel so heavy." She felt something ease in her chest. "Have you ever felt that way?" "More times than I'd like to admit," he replied, "but I stopped expecting anyone to notice." Her heart softened at that, perhaps because she understood it too well. "Rowan, when you noticed me earlier, why did it matter to you?" she asked. His expression shifted, quiet and sincere. "Because you looked like someone trying to carry everything alone, and it didn't feel right to let you keep doing that." She turned away for a moment, blinking against the warmth rising behind her eyes. Rowan noticed that too. "You don't have to hide it," he whispered, "not from me." She hesitated, then let out a soft breath. "It's been a hard year," she confessed, "a lonely one, and I didn't realize how much until tonight." He didn't interrupt. He let her speak, let her release every quiet ache she had been holding. "When I walked in," she continued, "I felt like I was fading, and you saw me when I barely saw myself." Rowan's eyes warmed in a way that made her chest flutter. "You were never fading," he said. "You were just tired. Anyone would be." She smiled weakly. "I didn't expect kindness tonight." "Kindness finds us," he murmured, "when we stop running from what hurts." Her eyes met his, and suddenly she felt it, the clarity she had been reaching for all night, the truth that had brushed against her earlier, just before the moment was broken. "Rowan," she whispered, "I think I needed tonight more than I realized." He leaned forward slightly, hope flickering across his face. "And what do you feel now?" She swallowed gently. That something important started here, something quiet but real. His breath softened. "I feel that too." They held each other's gaze, the world narrowing to the small table where two tired hearts had found a moment of recognition neither had expected. The storm outside faded into nothing more than a soft mist, and for the first time that night, the cafe felt brighter. Rowan glanced around the room thoughtfully, then back at her. "If the night has to end," he said, "it doesn't have to end completely." She tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "We could talk again," he offered gently. "Another evening, another quiet corner, only if you want to." Warmth spread through her like dawn breaking. "I'd like that," she said. He smiled, a slow, genuine smile that held a kind of promise she hadn't let herself hope for in a long time. Then he stood and offered his scarf again. "Come on," he softly, "let me walk you home." She hesitated only long enough to feel the moment settle deeply, meaningfully inside her. And as she rose from the table, she realized something simple and beautiful. The night he noticed what no one else did was the night she finally noticed her own heart again.